She was a 10-year-old pickpocket trying to survive on the streets when she targeted the wrong man, a mafia boss surrounded by guards. He caught her, saw something extraordinary in her worn notebook, and gave her one chance. 5 seconds later, everything changed, and he refused to let her walk away. Mina's fingers moved like water. That's what her aunt used to say before she stopped saying nice things at all. Before the shouting. Before the suitcase was thrown onto the cracked Chicago sidewalk with Mina expected to follow. You're 10 years old, and you can't even act normal. Aunt Patricia's voice still echoed in Mina's ears as she walked down State Street, dragging a backpack that held everything she owned. All you do is write crazy numbers in that stupid notebook. We're done. You hear me? Done. The door had slammed. The locks had clicked. Mina hadn't cried. She'd run the probability in her head instead. Chance of Aunt Patricia changing her mind within the next hour. 14%. Chance of surviving alone on Chicago's streets past nightfall, much lower. Her stomach growled. She'd eaten half a granola bar for breakfast and nothing since. The September wind cut through her thin jacket as businesspeople in suits rushed past, none of them seeing the small girl with tangled dark hair and a backpack covered in math doodles. Think, Mina. Calculate. She'd watched pickpockets work the loop before. Studied their patterns from the library steps while other kids played. The success rate was approximately 67% during rush hour if you targeted distracted businessmen checking their phones. The key was confidence and timing. Her fingers had always been quick. Good for stealing. Better for solving equations. At the corner of State and Madison, Mina spotted her mark. Tall man. Expensive charcoal coat, cashmere, probably Italian. Polished shoes that cost more than Aunt Patricia's rent. He was flanked by two other men in dark suits, but his attention was on his phone, thumb scrolling.
Rich.
Distracted.
Perfect.
Mina slipped into the crowd, moving with the flow of evening commuters. She calculated angles, velocity, timing. 3 steps behind him.
2, 1.
Her hand darted out as someone bumped into her from behind. Natural collision. Textbook execution. Her fingers grazed the leather wallet in his coat pocket.
Got it.
Stop right there, kid. The voice came from her left, one of the suits. Before Mina could run, a hand clamped on her shoulder. Not rough, but immovable as steel. Her heart hammered. Stupid. Stupid. She'd miscalculated. These weren't just rich guys. They were protected rich guys. Boss, the man called out. The tall man in the cashmere coat stopped mid-step. He turned slowly, phone lowering, and Mina got her first real look at him. He was younger than she'd thought. Maybe 35. Dark hair slicked back, sharp jawline, eyes the color of winter rain. Everything about him was precise. The way he stood, the way he looked at her, calculating something she couldn't quite name. You picked my pocket, he said. Not a question. His voice was quiet, almost gentle, which somehow made it worse.
Mina's mouth went dry. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
I'm hungry and I have nowhere to. Show me what's in your backpack. It's just. Show me. The man holding her shoulder released his grip, but stayed close. Mina's hands shook as she unzipped her backpack.
Clothes.
A toothbrush. And her notebook. The thick, worn spiral notebook she'd filled cover to cover with numbers, equations, patterns that made sense when nothing else did. The tall man's eyes fixed on it. What's that? Nothing.
Just.
My notebook. He held out his hand. Let me see it. Please, it's.
Now.
Mina handed it over, feeling like she was giving away a piece of herself. He opened it, and she waited for the usual reaction. Confusion, maybe disgust. Crazy numbers. Stupid math obsession. That's what everyone said. But his expression didn't change. He flipped through pages slowly. His finger traced one of her algorithms, a recursive sequence she'd been working on for weeks. Then another. A cipher she'd invented to pass time at the library. He stopped on a page filled with prime number patterns. Where did you learn this? He asked quietly. I taught myself. From library books. This equation here, he pointed to a complex derivative. This is graduate-level mathematics. Mina shrugged. It's just patterns. I see patterns in everything. One of the suited men leaned in to whisper something, but the tall man raised a hand for silence. He closed the notebook carefully and looked at Mina with those calculating winter eyes. What's your name? Mina. Full name. Mina Collins. But I don't think Collins is my real last name. I don't really know what it is. Where are your parents?
Dead.
I think. I lived with my aunt, but Mina's voice cracked. She kicked me out today. The man studied her for a long moment. Around them, the Chicago evening crowd flowed past like they were stones in a river. Finally, he handed back her notebook. Come with me, Mina.
What? Why?
Because you're either a genius or very good at copying things you don't understand. He tilted his head slightly. And I want to find out which. Who are you? The ghost of a smile touched his lips. My name is Lorenzo Vitali. And you little pickpocket just made the best mistake of your life. He turned and started walking. His men gestured for her to follow. Mina stood frozen on the sidewalk, her backpack hanging from one shoulder, her notebook clutched to her chest. Every logical part of her brain screamed danger, going with strange men, obvious trap, probability of survival approaching zero. But she was out of options, out of choices, out of time. And something in Lorenzo Vitali's eyes when he'd looked at her equations, recognition, understanding, maybe even respect, that was something she'd never seen before. Mina took a breath and followed him into the unknown. The penthouse elevator rose, so fast Mina's ears popped. She stood between Lorenzo's two guards. The one who'd caught her introduced himself as Marco, watching the floor numbers climb. 12.
25. 40.
The elevator was bigger than Aunt Patricia's entire living room, with mirrors and soft lighting that made everything feel unreal. Where are we going? Mina asked. Somewhere you can't steal from anyone else, Marco said, but his tone was mean, almost amused. The elevator opened directly into an office that took Mina's breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed Chicago spreading out below like a circuit board of lights. The room was all dark wood and leather, with screens mounted on one wall showing numbers and graphs Mina couldn't quite see from the entrance. Lorenzo shrugged off his cashmere coat and draped it over a chair. Underneath, he wore a black shirt and vest that probably cost more than a car. He moved to a small table near the window and opened a drawer. Hungry? He asked. Mina nodded before she could stop herself. He tossed her a box of crackers, the fancy kind with real cheese. Sit there, he pointed to a leather chair in the corner. Don't touch anything. Don't talk unless I ask you a question. Understand? Yes, sir. Just Lorenzo. Mina settled into the chair, which was so big her feet didn't touch the floor. She opened the crackers and tried not to eat them too fast, but hunger won. They were the best things she'd tasted in weeks. The office door opened and 4 men in suits entered, carrying laptops and folders. They looked exhausted, eyes red, shoulders slumped. One had coffee stains on his shirt. Status? Lorenzo asked, settling behind his massive desk. The oldest man, maybe 50 with gray at his temples, sighed. Nothing, boss. We've run every decryption algorithm we have. The Castellano vault is still locked tight. 3 months, Dimitri. 3 months you've been telling me this. The encryption is unlike anything we've seen. Old family crypto, probably designed by Eastern European specialists before the Castellanos went down. Without the key, it's impossible. Lorenzo's jaw tightened. Nothing is impossible. That vault holds leverage. Information. Money we need to expand into the south side before the Russos do. We understand, but show me again. Dimitri opened his laptop and turned it toward Lorenzo. Even from her corner, Mina could see the screen, a complex grid of numbers and symbols, layered in patterns that shifted every few seconds. The men gathered around Lorenzo's desk, pointing at different sections, arguing about modular arithmetic and blockchain keys and things that sounded important. Their voices rose and fell. Someone mentioned trying quantum computing. Someone else said that would take years. Mina ate another cracker and studied the screen. It wasn't that complicated, actually. The pattern was obvious once you stopped looking at it like a puzzle and started looking at it like a language. The symbols weren't random. They were algorithmic poetry, each layer referencing the one below it in a recursive loop. The base key was hidden in the frequency of repetition.
Simple, really.
Mina said quietly. No one heard her. The problem is the 256-bit encryption, one analyst was saying. Even if we brute force it. Excuse me, Mina said louder. All 5 men turned to look at her. Lorenzo's expression was unreadable. What? Dmitri asked, not unkindly. The pattern. It's not actually encrypted. Not really. Silence. Marco, standing by the door, made a sound that might have been a cough hiding a laugh. I'm sorry, little girl, Dmitri said carefully. This is very complex. It's a recursive substitution cipher masking as 256-bit encryption, Mina interrupted. She stood up, still holding a cracker.
See?
Every third symbol in the top row references the inverse of every 7th symbol in the bottom row. That creates a base pattern. Once you have that, the middle layers decode themselves. She walked toward the desk. The men parted. She looked at the screen more closely, her mind processing the numbers like breathing. The key is, she squinted, 7934126668.
No, wait.
7934126658. She pointed at the keyboard. Type that. Dmitri stared at her. You can't be serious. Type it, Lorenzo said quietly. Dmitri's hands shook slightly as he entered the sequence. He hit enter. The screen flickered. The symbols collapsed inward, reorganizing themselves. Then, with a soft chime, everything unlocked. Text appeared. Account numbers. Offshore holdings. Asset listings that scrolled and scrolled and scrolled. Holy Mother of God, someone whispered. At the bottom of the screen, a number appeared in green, $50, 000, 000, 000, 00000, $50 billion. The office went dead silent except for the hum of computers and Mina crunching her cracker. How long did that take? Lorenzo asked, his voice deadly calm. Marco checked his watch. From when she said, "Excuse me," to now. About 5 seconds. 5 seconds, Lorenzo repeated. He looked at Mina like he was seeing her for the first time. You just unlocked $50 billion in 5 seconds. Mina shrugged, confused by their reactions. I just liked the pattern. It was pretty once you saw it right. Dmitri sat down heavily in a chair. The other analyst just stared at the screen, then at Mina, then back at the screen. Lorenzo stood slowly and walked around his desk. He crouched down so he was eye level with Mina, studying her face like she was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. Mina Collins, he said softly. I don't think you understand what you just did. I solved your puzzle. You did more than that, he stood. Marco, get Dr. Chin on the phone. I want to know what we're dealing with. Dmitri, secure those accounts. Move everything to the secondary network within the hour. Complete blackout, no traces. Boss, moving 50 billion. Within the hour. Yes, sir. Lorenzo looked down at Mina again. His winter rain eyes held something new. Not just curiosity anymore. Recognition. And maybe, beneath it all, something like fear. Finish your crackers, he told her. You're going to be here a while. Mina woke up on a leather couch she didn't remember falling asleep on. Sunlight streamed through the massive windows. Someone had draped a soft blanket over her and put a pillow under her head. Her backpack sat on the floor beside her, notebooks safely tucked inside. She sat up, disoriented. Lorenzo's office was empty except for Marco, who stood by the windows with a cup of coffee, watching the city wake up. Morning, kid, he said. Sleep okay? What time is it? 6:30. Boss has been up all night, Marco gestured toward a closed door. Conference room. You want breakfast? I can order something. Mina's stomach answered before she could. Marco smiled and pulled out his phone. 20 minutes later, she was eating the best pancakes of her life when the conference room door opened. Lorenzo emerged with Dimitri and 3 other men she didn't recognize. They all looked tired but energized, like they'd been running on pure adrenaline. It's done, Dimitri said, closing his laptop. 50 billion, split across 200 shell companies in 17 countries. Completely untraceable to the source. The Castellano vault? Lorenzo asked. Wiped clean. As far as anyone knows, it was empty when we found it.
Good.
Go home. Get some sleep. The men filed out, casting curious glances at Mina as they passed. When the office was empty except for Marco and 1 other guard, Lorenzo poured himself coffee and sat across from her. How are the pancakes? Really good, Mina said honestly. Good, he studied her over his cup. Do you understand what happened last night? I solved your code thing. You did more than that. You made me the most powerful man in Chicago. He set down his coffee. In one night, I've consolidated more wealth than some small countries have. My enemies will notice. My allies will want to know how. And everyone will be looking for advantages. Mina swallowed her bite of pancake. Did I do something bad? No, his voice softened slightly. You did something remarkable. But remarkable has consequences. The office door opened without knocking, and a woman in a sharp gray suit strode in. She was maybe 40, with iron gray hair pulled back tight and eyes that reminded Mina of her old principal, sharp enough to see through lies. Lorenzo, the woman said. We need to talk.
Now.
Sophia, meet Mina. Mina, this is Sophia Reeves.
My consigliere.
Your what? Advisor, Sophia said curtly. She turned to Lorenzo. What the hell happened last night? I've got 3 different intelligence sources telling me your accounts suddenly ballooned. The Russos are making calls. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit just opened a new file. And I'm hearing whispers about offshore breaches. Lorenzo remained calm. All handled. The money's clean and distributed. $50 billion doesn't just appear, Lorenzo. Sophia's voice was steel. Every family from here to New York is going to be asking questions. The Russos will think you're expanding into their territory. The Chens will think you robbed them. And the feds, she stopped, noticing Mina. Who is this child? She's under my protection. That's not an answer. It's the only one you need right now. Sophia's jaw tightened. She pulled Lorenzo aside, but Mina could still hear their hushed conversation. You can't keep a child in this world, Sophia hissed. It's dangerous. For you and for her. She stays. Lorenzo. She stays, Sophia. End of discussion. Sophia looked like she wanted to argue more, but she just exhaled sharply.
Fine.
But if she's staying, she needs real protection. That office couch isn't going to cut it. Already arranged. By noon, Mina found herself in a different apartment, still in Lorenzo's building, but 3 floors down. It was smaller than the penthouse office, but still bigger than anywhere she'd ever lived. Real bedroom. Full kitchen. Windows overlooking Lake Michigan. This is yours, Lorenzo said, watching her explore. Marco will be outside your door. Always. 2 more guards at the elevator. You don't leave without telling me first. Am I a prisoner? Mina asked quietly.
No.
You're protected. He crouched down to her level. Last night, you made me very powerful. That means dangerous people will want to know how. They'll look for weaknesses, advantages, anything they can exploit. And if they find out about you. He didn't finish. He didn't have to. So, I have to hide. You have to be smart, he stood. This apartment is safe. This building is safe. Anywhere else, we need to be careful. Understand? Mina nodded, though she didn't fully understand. Yesterday, she'd been nobody, a weird kid with a notebook nobody wanted. Today she was.
What?
Important? Valuable. Dangerous. That evening, Marco brought her dinner, pizza, which she'd mentioned was her favorite, and a tablet loaded with books and educational apps. Through her window, she watched Chicago light up like a constellation. In his penthouse office, Lorenzo stood at his own window, phone pressed to his ear. "No, I don't know where it came from," he said smoothly. "Good fortune. Smart investments. You know how it is." But across the city, in dark rooms and quiet offices, other conversations were happening. Vitaly got rich overnight, a Russian accent growled. "Nobody gets rich overnight. Find out how. Flag every account associated with Lorenzo Vitali," an FBI agent instructed. "I want to know where that money came from. He's hiding something," another crime boss muttered. "Something big." And in her safe apartment, surrounded by guards she couldn't see, Mina solved equations in her notebook, unaware that her 5-second solution had just painted a target on both their backs. 3 weeks passed in Mina's new life. She woke up each morning to Marco knocking on her door with breakfast. She spent mornings reading books from Lorenzo's private library, real books with leather covers and pages that smelled like time. Afternoons, she worked on equations or explored the secured floors of the building. But the evenings were when things got interesting. "You're doing it wrong," Mina said, standing in the doorway of Lorenzo's office. Dmitri looked up from his spreadsheet, startled. "Excuse me? Your quarterly projections." The margin calculations. She walked over and pointed at his screen. "You're using simple interest instead of compound. That's going to throw off your estimates by at least 8% over 6 months. Dmitri blinked, then looked at the screen, then blinked again. "She's right," Lorenzo said from his desk, not looking up from his own work. "Fix it." "Yes, boss." After Dmitri left, looking slightly dazed, Lorenzo finally glanced at Mina. "You've been reading my financial files. Was I not supposed to? The tablet you gave me has access to the shared drive. Most 10-year-olds use tablets for games. Games are boring. Patterns are interesting." She tilted her head. "Did you know your money laundering system has 3 redundant steps? You could eliminate them and save about 47 hours of processing time per month." Lorenzo set down his pen. "Show me." For the next hour, Mina reorganized his entire laundering flowchart, streamlining processes he'd been using for years. Lorenzo watched in silence, occasionally asking questions, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair. "Where did you learn financial systems?" "I didn't. I just see inefficiency," she shrugged. "It's like when people walk, they usually waste about 30% of their energy on unnecessary movements. Your money system is the same. Too many extra steps." The corner of Lorenzo's mouth twitched. Almost a smile. "You're comparing money laundering to walking? Both are just movement optimization problems." This time he did smile, quick and genuine before his usual mask returned. "Go do your homework." "I don't have homework." "Then I'll give you some. You need to learn more than just mathematics." That's how their evening lesson started. Lorenzo, who hadn't opened a book for pleasure in years, found himself teaching Mina vocabulary at his conference table. History, geography, literature. She absorbed everything like a sponge, asking questions that made him think harder than any business negotiation. "Why do people fight wars over borders?" she asked one evening. "Borders are imaginary lines. Resources, power, pride. That's inefficient. Most human behavior is." She considered this, pencil tapping her notebook. "Are you inefficient?" Lorenzo paused. No one had ever asked him something so direct. "Sometimes. When it matters." "When does it matter?" He looked at her, really looked at her. Small for her age, all sharp angles and sharper mind, watching him with those dark eyes that saw too much. "When protecting something valuable," he said quietly. One evening, Marco found Lorenzo in the kitchen, the actual kitchen, not having food brought up, making hot chocolate. The boss, who had people for everything, was carefully measuring cocoa powder. Mina mentioned she'd never had real hot chocolate. Lorenzo said without looking up, "Just the powder packets." Marco wisely said nothing, but his smile was knowing. In the office, Mina had made herself indispensable in small ways. She reorganized files by what she called access probability algorithms. She created a color-coded system for urgent messages. She even pointed out a skimming scheme one of the lower-level accountants was running, caught it in about 30 seconds of reviewing receipts. "You're like having a financial bloodhound," Sophia remarked during one meeting, her initial coldness thawing. A very small, very terrifying bloodhound. But it was the quiet moments that changed Lorenzo most. Like when he found Mina asleep at the conference table, head on her notebook, having worked on encryption patterns until she'd exhausted herself. He'd carried her to the couch himself, not calling for Marco, and stayed an extra 10 minutes, just watching her sleep peacefully, something his world rarely offered anyone. Or the evening she asked completely out of nowhere, "Do you have a family?" Lorenzo's hand had frozen over his chess piece. They'd started playing every Thursday. She was getting better. "No," he said finally. "Ever?"
Once.
A long time ago, he moved his knight. "I had a younger sister, Isabella. She was brilliant like you, always asking questions, seeing things differently." "What happened to her?" "She got sick when she was 9. Nothing we did helped." His voice was flat, emotionless, but his hand gripped the chess piece too tightly. "That was 20 years ago." Mina was quiet for a moment. "Then, I think she would have liked me." Lorenzo looked up, surprised by the ache in his chest.
"Yeah."
"She would have." That night, after Mina went to her apartment, Sophia found Lorenzo still at his desk, staring at an old photograph he kept locked in a drawer. A little girl with dark hair and a bright smile. "You're getting attached," Sophia observed. "She's an asset, Lorenzo." He closed the drawer. "She's just a kid who needed help. She's becoming more than that." To Sophia's voice was gentle. "I see how you look at her. Like she's... Don't. Like she's family." Lorenzo said nothing, but his silence was answer enough. In her apartment below, Mina sat by her window, watching the city lights. For the first time since her aunt kicked her out, maybe for the first time ever, she felt something strange and unfamiliar. She felt safe. She felt wanted. She felt like maybe, possibly, she was home. The first sign of trouble came through Dimitri. "Boss, we've got movement," he said, spreading files across Lorenzo's desk. 3 separate incidents in the past week. Lorenzo looked up from the financial report Mina had corrected that morning. "What kind of movement?" "The Russos sent people to our South Side operations. Just watching. Not making moves, but they're there. The Chin family has been asking questions through intermediaries, very careful questions about our recent expansion," and Dimitri hesitated. "FBI Financial Crimes Division has been pulling records on our shell companies." "Which ones?" "All of them. Every single entity we moved the Castellano money through." Lorenzo's expression didn't change, but his fingers stopped tapping his desk. "They can't trace it back. Not directly. But they're looking. And they're not the only ones." That afternoon, Sophia brought worse news. "We intercepted chatter from the Volkov Bratva," she said, referring to the Russian organized crime network. "They've hired a team of hackers, Eastern European specialists, the kind that cracked the Deutsche Bank 2 years ago. Target
Us.
Specifically, trying to reverse engineer how we access the Castellano vault." She pulled up a screen showing lines of code. "They're good, Lorenzo. Really good. They've already identified the encryption pattern as non-standard. They're calling it algorithmic poetry." Lorenzo felt ice in his veins. Those were Mina's exact words when she described the pattern. "How close are they?" "Close enough to be dangerous. If they trace the algorithmic signature," Sophia met his eyes, "they'll know it wasn't corporate hackers or government software. They'll know it was a unique human intelligence. And then they'll start looking for who." In a basement across the city, Alexei Volkov sat in front of 6 monitors, watching code scroll past. His team of 3 hackers worked silently around him. "This isn't machine code," one said in Russian. "The solution pathway is too intuitive, too organic." "A person, then," Alexei said. "Yes, but not just any person. Whoever broke this encryption saw patterns we've been missing for months. It's like the hackers struggled for words. Like they spoke the code's language natively. Can you identify them? If we can access Vitali's security footage from the night of the breach, maybe. We're working on it. Alexei smiled coldly. Work faster. Meanwhile, at the FBI's Chicago field office, Agent Sarah Chen, no relation to the crime family, studied financial flowcharts with her partner. It's too clean, she said. $50 billion moves overnight, and there's not a single red flag? No unusual access points, no digital fingerprints. Maybe Vitali's just that good, her partner offered. Nobody's that good. Someone made this happen, she tapped the timeline. 3 months of failed attempts, then suddenly breakthrough. Something changed that night. Someone changed it. Back in Lorenzo's building, tension was rising from a different direction. 3 of Lorenzo's senior lieutenants sat in his office. Vincent, Carlos, and an older man named Paulie, who'd been with the family for 30 years. Boss, with all respect, Vincent said, we're sitting on a gold mine and not using it. Explain, Lorenzo said coldly. The girl. She cracked the Castellano vault in 5 seconds. Think what she could do with real support. We could access every secured system in the city. Banks, police databases, rival family networks. She could make us untouchable. She's 10 years old. She's a weapon, Carlos interjected. The kind that comes along once in a lifetime. We'd be stupid not to use her. Use her? Lorenzo's voice dropped to a dangerous quiet. Like a tool? Like equipment. Paulie, the oldest and wisest, held up his hand. What they're saying, Lorenzo, is that keeping her hidden might be more dangerous than putting her to work. If she's valuable, she's vulnerable. Better she's an active asset than a passive target. No. Lorenzo. I said no, he stood, and all 3 men instinctively leaned back. Mina is under my protection. That means she's not a weapon, not a tool, not an asset to be deployed. She's a child. Do I need to say it in simpler terms? Vincent tried once more. The other families are circling. If we don't act, we remain strong through patience and strategy. Not through exploiting a 10-year-old girl. Lorenzo's eyes were hard as diamonds. Anyone who suggests using her again will answer to me personally. Are we clear? The 3 men nodded quickly and left. Sophia, who'd been listening from the doorway, stepped inside. You know they're not entirely wrong. If the wrong people find out about her capabilities, they won't. Lorenzo, half the underworld, is already looking. It's only a matter of time before. Then we make sure they're looking in the wrong direction. That evening, as Mina worked on geometry problems at the conference table, she noticed Lorenzo was quieter than usual. His chess moves were distracted. Are you okay? She asked.
Fine.
Why? You've lost your queen, and you didn't even notice, she pointed at the board. That's not like you. Lorenzo looked down. She was right. My mind is elsewhere. Work problems. Something like that. Mina studied him with those 2 knowing eyes. Are the problems because of me? He met her gaze. What makes you ask that? I'm not stupid, Lorenzo. I know people have been asking about you. About money.
About how things changed, she paused.
I can leave if I'm causing trouble. No, the word came out harder than he intended. He softened his voice. You're not going anywhere. You're safe here. But what if I'm making you unsafe? Lorenzo reached across the chessboard and did something he rarely did. He put his hand over hers.
Let me worry about that.
Your job is to be a kid. Study. Learn. Eat too much pizza. Let me handle everything else. Mina nodded, but she looked unconvinced. Outside, in the darkness of Chicago night, multiple forces were converging. Hackers typing. Agents investigating. Rival families planning. The storm was coming, and Lorenzo knew it. He just had to keep Mina safe until it passed. 2 months into her new life, Mina discovered the pool. She'd been exploring the secured upper floors when she found it, a beautiful indoor pool on the 42nd floor, all glass walls and underwater lights that made the water glow blue-green. It was early morning, and the space was empty except for Marco, who was doing laps.
Didn't know you could swim, Mina said.
Marco surfaced, pushing wet hair from his eyes. Military training. You swim, kid? Never learned. Never. Marco looked genuinely surprised. Every kid should know how to swim. Come on, I'll teach you. I don't have a swimsuit. So? Wear shorts and a t-shirt. Water doesn't care. That's how Lorenzo found them an hour later. Mina laughing as Marco showed her how to float, her face lit up with pure joy he'd never seen before. She's a natural, Marco called out. Fearless once she understood the physics of buoyancy. Lorenzo watched from the doorway, something warm and unfamiliar settling in his chest. Don't let her drown, Marco. Wouldn't dream of it, boss. After that, swimming became part of Mina's morning routine. Within 2 weeks, she could do basic strokes. Within 4, she was diving from the edge, calculating trajectory angles before each jump. You're overthinking it, Marco laughed one morning. No such thing, Mina shot back, then executed a perfect dive. The library became her other sanctuary. Lorenzo's private collection was massive, 3 rooms of floor-to-ceiling books he'd inherited from his grandfather. Most he'd never read. But Mina devoured them. Literature, history, philosophy, science. She'd curl up in the leather chair by the window and lose herself for hours. One evening, Lorenzo found her reading The Count of Monte Cristo. That's a complex book for your age, he observed. It's about revenge and justice, Mina said without looking up. And whether they're the same thing. Are they? What do you think? She considered. Revenge is emotional. Justice is mathematical. They can't be the same. When you're older, you'll find the line between them blurs. That's because people make it blurry. Numbers don't lie. People do. Lorenzo smiled slightly. How did you get so cynical at 10? How did you get so cynical at 35?
Touché?
She started calling him just Lorenzo instead of Mr. Vitali or Sir. It happened naturally, no specific moment, just a gradual shift. The guards noticed, exchanging glances the first few times, but Lorenzo never corrected her. The guards themselves were becoming protective. Not just Marco, but all of them. There was Tommy, who brought her hot chocolate every Tuesday. Big guy, ex-Marine, who looked terrifying until Mina corrected his poker odds calculations, and he started treating her like a genius niece. There was Ray, the night shift guard, who taught her chess strategies Lorenzo hadn't even shown her. And Maria, the only female guard, who took Mina shopping for actual clothes that fit. The boss gave me his credit card and said whatever she needs, Maria explained in the department store. So we're doing this right. Mina ended up with jeans that didn't fall down, shirts without holes, a real winter coat, and Maria's insistence. At least one dress for when you feel fancy. I never feel fancy, Mina protested. You will someday, trust me. But it was the custom encryption system that really showed how much Mina had grown into her new world. She'd been tinkering with it for weeks, a personal project just for fun. One evening, she presented it to Lorenzo on his tablet. I made you something, she said. He looked at the screen. Lines of elegant code, flowing like water. What is it? A new encryption system for your financial network. See, your current one is good, but it's vulnerable to quantum computing attacks. This one uses a triple-layer recursive algorithm that shifts every 72 hours. Even if someone breaks one layer, the whole thing reorganizes before they can breach the second. Lorenzo stared at her. Then at the screen. Then back at her. Mina, this is. Do you understand what you've created? A better security system? You've created something that would take a team of professional cryptographers months to develop. And you did it for fun. She shrugged, pleased but trying not to show it. I got bored during math time. This was more interesting. He pulled her into a rare hug, brief, almost awkward, but genuine. You're extraordinary, you know that? Mina hugged him back, and for a moment, she felt completely safe. Completely home. The transformation was complete in small ways, too. She had a favorite coffee mug in Lorenzo's office, bright yellow with a math joke on it that only she found funny. She had a standing Tuesday lunch with Dimitri, where they discussed financial models. She had her own spot on the couch during evening chess games. One night, during a thunderstorm, she'd fallen asleep on that couch while Lorenzo worked. When he finished at midnight, he found her curled up under the blanket, her notebook clutched to her chest. He sat in the chair across from her, just watching her sleep peacefully. No nightmares. No fear. Just a kid, safe and warm. Sophia found him there an hour later, still watching. "You're going to have a hard time letting her go," Sophia said softly. "I'm not letting her go, Lorenzo. She stays, Sophia. Whatever comes, she stays. He stopped, searching for words he rarely used. She's mine to protect now. That's not changing." Sophia saw the determination in his eyes and knew Lorenzo Vitali, the cold, calculating mafia boss who trusted no one, had just admitted something he probably didn't even fully understand himself. He loved this strange, brilliant little girl. She'd become his family. And that made what was coming next even more dangerous. The betrayal came from an unlikely source. Gerald Moss had worked in Lorenzo's finance division for 8 years. Middle-aged, unremarkable, the kind of man who blended into backgrounds. He processed transactions, filed reports, and went home to his apartment alone every night. He was also drowning in gambling debts. When the Russo family's collectors cornered him outside his apartment one Tuesday night, Gerald was 3 weeks from having his kneecaps broken. They offered him a simple deal: information for debt forgiveness. "We want to know about Vitali's sudden windfall," the collector said. "Everything. How he did it. Who helped him. Every detail you have." Gerald hesitated for maybe 5 seconds. Then he nodded. 3 days later, an encrypted hard drive changed hands in a parking garage. On it, financial records from the night of the Castellano vault breach, server logs, access timestamps, and most damaging, security camera footage from Lorenzo's building. The footage showed everything. A small girl with a backpack being brought into the building. The same girl entering and leaving Lorenzo's office. Timestamps matching exactly when the vault was cracked. In a private room at Russo family headquarters, 5 men watched the footage on repeat. "That's just a kid," one said, confused. "That kid was there the exact moment $50 billion got unlocked," the Russo underboss replied. "Coincidence? Has to be. She's what, 10 years old?" The underboss rewound to footage from the building's lobby, Mina being escorted through security. "Look at what she's carrying."
They zoomed in.
A notebook, visible for just a moment, covered in complex mathematical equations. "Get me everything on this girl," the underboss ordered. "Who she is, where she came from, why Vitali has her." Across town, the Volkov Bratva received the same information through their own channels. Alexei studied the security footage with cold, analytical eyes. "Find this child," he told his team. "She is the key." Vitali didn't unlock that vault with technology. He used her. "A child genius?" one of his hackers asked skeptically. "Look at the timeline. 3 months of failure. She arrives. 5 seconds later, success." Alexei smiled without warmth. "Vitali found something special. Something we can use." Even the FBI got a version of the leak, anonymous, untraceable, just enough to redirect their investigation. Agent Sarah Chen studied the new information at her desk, her coffee going cold. "There's a minor involved," she told her partner. "Vitali's been keeping a child in his building. Same time frame as the financial anomaly. That's unusual, even for organized crime. More than unusual. It's leverage." Sarah pulled up the building's resident records. No child registered at that address. No school enrollment. No official records. Either she's completely off-grid, or she's not supposed to exist. Sarah nodded slowly. "We need to know who this girl is. And why a mafia boss is hiding her." The first Lorenzo knew about the leak came from Sophia's emergency call. "We have a problem," she said, walking into his office at 7 a.m., her face grim. "Someone sold us out." Lorenzo looked up from the financial report he'd been reviewing. "Explain." She pulled up her tablet, showing him surveillance stills of Mina. "These are circulating. The Russos have them. The Volkovs have them. Even the FBI has fragments." Lorenzo's hand tightened on his pen.
How?
"Internal leak. Has to be. Someone with access to our security feeds and transaction logs from that night." She pulled up more information. "Gerald Moss. Finance Division. He disappeared 2 days ago. His apartment was cleaned out. Find him. Already trying." "Lorenzo, that's not the main problem. The problem is what people are concluding from this information." She showed him intercepts from rival family communications. "They've connected Mina to the vault breach. They think she's the key." For the first time in years, Lorenzo felt genuine fear. Not for himself, for her. How many families know? At minimum, Russos, Volkovs, and the Chens. Possibly others. And there's chatter about— Sophia hesitated. About acquisition. Acquisition. His voice was dangerously quiet. "They want to take her, Lorenzo. If she unlocked 50 billion once, they think she can do it again. For them." Lorenzo stood abruptly, his chair rolling back. The careful control he always maintained cracked visibly. "Mobilize everyone. Triple the guards on her floor. No one gets within 5 floors of her apartment without clearance. Marco doesn't leave her side. Not for a second. Already done." "But, Lorenzo." "What?" "If they're planning to take her, they won't stop because of guards. They'll come with everything they have." Sophia met his eyes. "We need a long-term solution. We can't just defend. We need to act." Lorenzo walked to his window, looking down at Chicago spreading below. Somewhere in that city, dangerous men were planning to take the one person he'd allowed himself to care about in 20 years. His reflection in the glass looked like a stranger, jaw tight, eyes hard, the mask of calm completely gone. "Set up a meeting with security chiefs," he said. "Everyone. Within the hour. And get Marco. Tell him." Lorenzo's voice wavered almost imperceptibly. "Tell him his only job now is keeping Mina alive." In her apartment 3 floors down, Mina was eating cereal and working on equations, completely unaware that in smoky rooms across Chicago, men were looking at her picture and planning her kidnapping. The storm had arrived, and it was aimed directly at her. It happened at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. Mina woke to silence, the wrong kind of silence. The building always hummed with subtle sounds, ventilation, distant traffic, the elevator's occasional movement. But now there was nothing. Even the digital clock on her nightstand was dark. Power cut. She sat up slowly, her mind immediately calculating. Probability of random power failure in a building with triple redundant systems, less than 2%. Probability of deliberate attack, much higher. Her door burst open. Marco, dressed in tactical gear she'd never seen before, had a finger to his lips. "We have to move." Now his voice was barely a whisper. "What's happening?"
Don't talk.
"Stay behind me. Do exactly what I say." He pulled her into the hallway just as the emergency lights clicked on, dim red that made everything look like a nightmare. 2 other guards flanked them immediately, weapons drawn. They made it to the stairwell when the first explosion hit. The sound was massive, echoing through the building. The floor shook. Somewhere above, glass shattered. "They're breaching from the roof," Marco said into his radio. "Multiple contacts. Boss, they're coming from above and below simultaneously." Lorenzo's voice crackled back, steel-edged and calm. "Get her to the safe room. South stairwell. I'm on my way." They moved fast, but Mina could hear it now. Footsteps, lots of them, coming from multiple directions. Professional. Coordinated. The sound pattern suggested at least 12 men, maybe more. "Marco," she whispered. "They've split into 3 teams. One on the roof, one coming up from the parking garage, one blocking the main exits. How do you Sound distribution. The footsteps echo differently depending on floor composition and distance. Marco looked at her, then spoke into his radio. Boss, the kid says 3 teams. Roof, garage, and main exits blocked. She's right, Lorenzo's voice came back. I've got eyes on the feeds that are still working. Marco, change of plans. Safe room is compromised, they knew about it. Take her to my office. I'll meet you there. They changed direction, moving through corridors Mina knew by heart from months of exploration. But everything felt different in the red emergency light, with the sound of gunfire echoing from above. They reached the private elevator to Lorenzo's penthouse. Marco swiped his emergency card. Nothing. They've locked down the elevators, he cursed. There's another way, Mina said. The service passage. Behind the wall panel near the kitchen. How do you know about that? I notice things. Marco didn't argue. They found the panel, and Mina was right, a narrow service corridor, barely wide enough for an adult. They climbed the steel ladder in darkness, Mina's heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Gunfire erupted below them. Close. Too close. Keep climbing, Marco urged. They emerged into Lorenzo's penthouse office through a maintenance access. The space was dark except for city lights through the windows. Lorenzo was there with 4 guards, moving with military precision, checking weapons and sight lines. He turned when they entered, and for a split second, Mina saw raw relief on his face before the mask snapped back. You're okay, he said. They're in the building, Marco reported. At least 12 hostiles, probably more. Professional setup. Volkov's, Lorenzo said coldly. Alexei's signature, simultaneous pressure points. He moved to his desk, pulling up building schematics on a tablet running on backup battery. They'll breach this floor within 3 minutes. Marco, you and Ray take the east stairwell. Tommy, Vincent, cover the elevator bank. Let them think we're spread thin. What about you, boss? I'm staying with Mina. He pulled a handgun from his desk drawer, checking it with practiced efficiency. And I'm ending this personally. Mina had never seen this version of Lorenzo. Cold, tactical, every movement precise as a chess master planning 5 moves ahead. This was the man who'd built an empire. The man people feared. The building's intercom crackled, still functional on backup power. Through it, they could hear movement on lower floors. Mina, Lorenzo said quietly. Come here. She moved to his side. He pointed at the tablet showing floor plans. Your mind works faster than mine for patterns. Watch the security feeds that are still active. Tell me what you see. Mina studied the screens. 6 cameras still worked, showing different corridors and stairwells. Men in black tactical gear moved through them. They're not moving randomly, she said. Look, Team 1 is advancing every 12 seconds. Team 2 every 15. Team 3-inch, she watched the pattern. They're timing it. Coordinated intervals to avoid crossfire. Smart. Keep watching. Tell me if the pattern changes. The first hostile reached their floor. Mina saw him on camera, masked, armed, moving like a predator. East stairwell, she said. 20 seconds until he reaches Marco's position. Lorenzo spoke into his radio. Marco. East door. 20 seconds. The camera showed Marco step out at precisely the right moment, neutralizing the hostile before he could react. 2 more coming from the service elevator, Mina reported, her voice steadier than she felt. They're using the blind spot near the electrical room. Lorenzo relayed it. His men adjusted. For 15 minutes, Mina became their eyes, calculating timing and positions while Lorenzo directed his guards like chess pieces. She was scared, terrified, actually, but her mind kept working, finding patterns in the chaos. Then she saw him on the monitor. Gerald Moss, the traitor, standing in a hallway with 3 armed men, pointing toward Lorenzo's office. Lorenzo, she said quietly. There. He looked at the screen, and his expression went completely cold. Tommy, South Corridor. Bring me Gerald Moss. Alive. The final hostile team breached through the maintenance door, the same one Mina and Marco had used. But Lorenzo was waiting. The fight was short, brutal, and one-sided. When silence finally fell, Lorenzo's guards had secured 8 hostiles.
For more were dead.
Gerald Moss was on his knees in the hallway, Tommy's gun to his head. Lorenzo walked over slowly, Mina behind him despite his gesture to stay back. "Who hired you?" Lorenzo asked quietly. "The Volkovs," Gerald sobbed. "They paid my debts. They said they just wanted information. I didn't know they'd." "You sold out a child." I'm sorry. Lorenzo's expression never changed. "Get him out of my sight." As guards dragged Gerald away, Lorenzo finally turned to Mina. She was shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. "You did well," he said softly. "You kept us alive. They came for me. Yes. They'll come again, won't they?" Lorenzo crouched down to her level, and Mina saw something fierce and protective in his eyes. "Not if they think you're gone." The plan came together in 48 hours. Lorenzo's penthouse office became a war room. Sofia, Marco, Dmitri, and 3 other trusted members of his inner circle gathered around the conference table, speaking in hushed tones despite the building being locked down. "It's the only way," Sofia said, looking at blueprints and logistics reports. "As long as they think she's alive and accessible, they'll keep coming. The Volkovs won't stop. Neither will anyone else who heard about her." "You're talking about faking a child's death," Marco said, his voice strained. "That's necessary," Lorenzo finished coldly. "It protects her. It ends this." Mina sat in the corner, listening. They'd try to send her away, but she'd refused. "If this is about me, I get to hear it." Lorenzo had relented. Now she listened as they planned her death like a military operation. "We'll stage a car bombing," Dmitri explained, pointing at a route map. "Armored vehicle leaving the building, heading to a secure location. The vehicle gets hit on Lower Wacker Drive, controlled explosion, minimal civilian risk." "Body?" Sofia asked. "Medical cadaver, matching age and approximate size. We have contacts at the university morgue, with the right dental work and DNA samples planted beforehand." "DNA samples?" Mina asked quietly. Sofia looked at her gently.
"Hair, blood."
"Already collected from your apartment. The forensics will show you died in the explosion. It has to be completely convincing." "What about witnesses?" Marco asked. "We create them," Lorenzo said. "News crews will be coincidentally nearby. We leak the route to the FBI, make them think they're conducting surveillance. When the explosion happens, they become our witnesses." "The underworld." "Gerald Moss," Lorenzo said grimly. "Before we hand him to the authorities, he'll spread word through his contacts that the girl died in a rescue attempt by rival families. Make it seem like the Volkovs triggered the explosion by accident. They'll believe it because it makes them look incompetent, and people always believe stories that make others look bad." The room fell silent. "When?" Marco finally asked. "Tomorrow night." Mina felt her breath catch. Tomorrow. Her death was scheduled for tomorrow. That evening, Lorenzo found Mina in the library, staring out at the Chicago skyline she'd grown to love. "Second thoughts?" he asked. "About dying?" "Yeah, kind of." He almost smiled. "It's not real death. It feels real. I won't be Mina anymore. I can't come back here. Can't see the city or the pool," or she stopped. "I'll miss this." Lorenzo sat beside her, and for a long moment, they just watched the lights together. "The estate where you're going," he said finally. "It's about 40 minutes outside the city. Woods, privacy, completely secure. There's a pond, a real library, bigger than this one, and the best internet connection money can buy. Will you be there?" "As often as I can." "But Mina," he turned to face her.
"You need to understand.
Once we do this, you can never be Mina Collins again. We're giving you a new identity, new name, new life. No one can know who you really are. Not even Marco? Or Tommy? Or Maria? Only the people in that room tonight will know the truth. Everyone else has to believe you died. It's the only way to keep you safe." Mina processed this, her brilliant mind calculating the implications. What's my new name? You get to choose.
She thought about it.
About the books she'd read in this library, the patterns she discovered, the life she'd built in just a few months. Emma, she said finally. Emma Vitali. Lorenzo's expression shifted. Surprise, then something deeper. Vitali, you said new identity. If I'm going to disappear, she looked at him directly. I want to belong somewhere. To someone. Is that okay? For one of the rare times in his life, Lorenzo Vitali was speechless. He pulled her into a tight hug, and Mina felt his hand shake slightly against her back. Yeah, he said quietly. That's okay. The next night, at 9:47 p.m., an armored SUV left Lorenzo's building. Inside were 3 guards and a small figure in a hooded jacket visible through the tinted windows. FBI surveillance van, parked 2 blocks away, tracked it. 3 separate rival family scouts reported the movement. The SUV took Lower Wacker Drive, the underground roadway beneath Chicago's downtown. Halfway through, at a predetermined point with minimal traffic, the explosion was massive. The blast rocked the tunnel. Fire erupted. The SUV flipped, becoming an inferno. Emergency services responded within minutes, but the vehicle burned too hot, too fast. By the time firefighters contained it, there was barely anything left. FBI agents, arriving at the scene, found exactly what they were supposed to find: dental fragments matching Mina Collins' records. DNA evidence in the blood spatter. Witnesses who'd seen the small figure in the vehicle. News outlets ran the story by midnight. Child dies in Mafia violence, FBI investigating. In their respective headquarters, the Volkovs, the Russos, and the Chens watched the reports. They had their own people confirm it. The girl was dead. The key to understanding Vitali's fortune was gone. Alexei Volkov threw a glass against the wall. Incompetent fools. She was worth billions. But she was gone. The manhunt ended. What no one knew: the figure in the SUV had been a mannequin. The guards had escaped through a service tunnel 2 minutes before the explosion. And Mina, now Emma, was already 40 miles away, watching the news coverage from a secure estate deep in the woods. She sat on a couch in her new home, Marco beside her, as her own death played on television. How do you feel? Marco asked gently. Weird, Emma admitted. Like I'm watching a stranger. You are, in a way. Mina Collins died tonight. But Emma Vitali? He smiled. She gets to live. Lorenzo arrived 3 hours later, coming straight from managing the aftermath. He found Emma still awake, sitting by the window of her new room. Can't sleep, he asked. Just thinking. About being dead, she looked at him. Does it get easier? What? Leaving your old life behind. Becoming someone new. Lorenzo sat on the edge of her bed. I don't know. I never had to do it, he paused. But I know this. Whoever you become, whatever name you use, the person you are inside doesn't change. You're still you, Emma. Just safer. She nodded slowly. Then, thank you for keeping me alive. Always, he said simply. And in that moment, in a quiet room far from Chicago, a new life began. The estate was nothing like the penthouse. Where Lorenzo's Chicago building had been all steel and glass and vertical power, this place was horizontal peace. A sprawling house of stone and wood, surrounded by 40 acres of forest. No neighbors for miles. A pond out back where geese landed at sunrise. Silence that felt like safety. Emma spent the first 3 days exploring. Her new room was twice the size of her old apartment, with windows overlooking the woods. The library Lorenzo had mentioned wasn't just bigger, it was enormous. 2 stories with a rolling ladder and books that smelled like history. There was a study with a desk already set up for her, computers with encrypted connections, math books stacked neatly. Her old notebook, the one she'd carried from her aunt's house, sat in the center of the desk like a promise. You're still you, Lorenzo had said. Even here. Marco stayed for the first week, along with 2 other guards who lived in a separate cottage on the property. They were friendly but professional, giving Emma space while maintaining security protocols. But it was the quiet that got to her. No city sounds. No elevator chimes. No Tommy bringing hot chocolate at odd hours, or Maria asking her opinion on movies, or Dimitri arguing about financial models. Just silence. And trees. And Emma. On the fourth night, Lorenzo arrived for dinner. He'd been commuting back and forth, managing the fallout from Mina's death, while ensuring Emma's new life was properly established. They ate together in the large dining room, pasta that Marco had cooked, far better than either of them expected. "How are you adjusting?" Lorenzo asked. "It's quiet. That's the point." "I know." Emma pushed pasta around her plate. "It's just different. Different from the building. Different from everything." Lorenzo studied her carefully. "You're safe here, Emma. That's what matters." "I know," she said again, but her voice was small. After dinner, Lorenzo asked her to join him in the study. He'd been working on something at the desk, papers spread out, his reading glasses on. She'd never seen him wear glasses before. It made him look more human somehow. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. Emma sat, her feet not quite touching the floor, just like in his Chicago office months ago. Some things didn't change. "I need to explain how this works," Lorenzo began. "Your new identity is airtight. Emma Vitali, born in Portland, Oregon. Private tutoring, no public school records to trace. Moved here with your legal guardian for security reasons." "Legal guardian?"
Me.
"On paper, I'm your distant cousin who took custody after your parents died in an accident 3 years ago." Emma processed this. "So, I'm your responsibility. Legally, yes. But not really your family.
Just.
Paperwork." Lorenzo removed his glasses slowly. "Is that what you think?" "I don't know what to think. I know I can't go back to Chicago. Can't see the people I knew. Can't be Mina anymore." Her voice cracked slightly. "So what am I?"
Just.
"A protected asset in a safe house." "Emma, am I staying here alone now?" The question burst out of her, raw and vulnerable. "Are you going back to Chicago and I'm just here?" With guards and books and silence. Lorenzo stood abruptly, walked around the desk, and knelt down so he was eye level with her, exactly as he'd done the first night she'd solved the vault, when she'd been a frightened pickpocket instead of a girl with a new name. "Listen to me," he said quietly. "You are not an asset. You are not a responsibility. You are not something I'm warehousing in the woods." "Then what am I?" "You're my daughter." The words hung in the air between them. Emma's eyes went wide. "These papers," Lorenzo continued, touching the documents on the desk, "they're not just legal fiction. They're adoption papers. Real ones. Emma Vitali isn't just a name I made up to hide you. It's who you are. Who I want you to be. But you're just doing this to protect." "I'm doing this because I want to." His voice was fierce now, more emotion than she'd ever heard from him. "Because somewhere between you correcting my accountants and teaching me that revenge and justice are different things, you became the most important person in my world. Because I couldn't protect my sister 20 years ago, but I can protect you. Because when I thought they might actually hurt you during that attack, I realized I would burn Chicago to the ground to keep you safe." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "You're not alone, Emma. You're home. This is your home. I'm your family. That's not strategy or protection or deception. That's just truth." He picked up a pen and held it out to her. "I've already signed. As your legal guardian and adoptive father. If you sign too, it's official. Emma Vitali. My daughter." Emma took the pen with shaking hands. She looked at the papers, official documents, legal and binding and real. Her new name. His name. Family. She signed where he pointed, her handwriting small and careful. Lorenzo countersigned as witness, then set the papers aside. He opened his arms, and Emma fell into them, hugging him tight while tears finally came. "I've got you," he whispered. "Always." For the first time in her life, maybe the first time ever, Emma smiled a smile that reached all the way to her heart. Not the polite smile she gave strangers, or the clever smile when she solved a puzzle. A real smile. A home smile. A daughter's smile. "Thank you," she whispered. "Dad." Lorenzo's arms tightened around her, and if his own eyes were wet, neither of them mentioned it. Outside, the woods were dark and quiet. Inside, a family had been born. 6 years later, Emma Vitali was 16 years old when she walked into the Chicago office for the first time in 6 years. She'd grown, of course. Taller now, though still slender, with dark hair that fell past her shoulders and eyes that held the same calculating intelligence, but sharper now, more confident. She wore a simple black suit that Lorenzo had insisted on. If you're coming to meetings, you dress the part. The office looked the same. Floor-to-ceiling windows. The leather furniture. The city spreading below like a kingdom. But everything else had changed. "Emma," Marco greeted her at the elevator, grinning. He'd stayed with them at the estate for 2 years before returning to Chicago. "Look at you. All grown up." "I'm still shorter than you," Emma said dryly. "Everyone's shorter than me." He walked her to the conference room. "Fair warning, the old guard's in there. Some of them don't know about you yet. This is going to be interesting." Lorenzo's inner circle sat around the table. Sophia, now with more gray in her hair. Dimitri, still brilliant but looking older. Vincent and Carlos, the lieutenants who'd once wanted to weaponize a 10-year-old, and 3 newer faces Emma didn't recognize. Lorenzo sat at the head of the table. When Emma entered, he nodded slightly. "Gentlemen, ladies, meet Emma Vitali. My daughter. And, as of today, my strategic advisor." The room went silent. Vincent's eyes widened in recognition. "The girl from 6 years ago, yes," Lorenzo said calmly. "For those who weren't here then, Emma solved the Castellano vault. Emma created our current encryption systems. And Emma has been analyzing our operations from the estate, finding inefficiencies we didn't know existed." He gestured to the empty chair beside him. "She's joining us." Emma took her seat, meeting each person's eyes in turn. She could see the calculations happening: surprise, skepticism, curiosity, and in Vincent's case, something like fear.
Good.
People should be cautious around her. "Let's begin," Lorenzo said. "Dimitri, the South Side expansion?" Dimitri presented numbers on the screen: property acquisitions, projected revenue, timeline estimates. Emma watched silently for 3 minutes, then raised her hand slightly. Lorenzo nodded. "Emma? The timeline is wrong," she said simply. "You're estimating 8 months for full operational capacity, but you haven't accounted for the Chicago Zoning Board's review cycles, which average 11 weeks, not 6. Also, your projected revenue assumes consistent market conditions, but there's a 73% probability of federal interest rate changes in Q2 that will affect property values." Dimitri blinked. How did you? Your model is good, but incomplete. If you adjust the timeline to 10 months and build in a 4% market variance buffer, the numbers are more realistic." She pulled out a tablet and sent files to the main screen. "I ran alternate scenarios last night. This one has the highest success probability." The room stared at her projections. They were flawless. "She's right," Sophia said slowly. "These numbers are better than ours." "Of course they are," Emma said without arrogance. "I had more time to work on them." Over the next hour, Emma dissected 3 more presentations, offering corrections and optimizations that made veterans twice her age look amateur. She wasn't mean about it, just precise, surgical, finding the flaws others missed. By the time the meeting ended, the room's skepticism had shifted to something else. Respect.
And wariness.
"You've been training her," Sophia said after the others left, staying behind with Lorenzo and Emma. "She's been training herself," Lorenzo corrected. "I just provided resources." "The encryption system she built, it's remarkable. FBI tried to breach it last year. They couldn't even identify what they were looking at." Sophia looked at Emma with frank assessment. "You've become the brain of this operation. You know that, right?" Emma shrugged. "I just see patterns. Always have." "Most people see patterns. You see everything." Over the next weeks, Emma became a fixture at strategic meetings. At first, she just observed and offered analysis. But gradually, her role expanded. When the Russo family approached with a negotiation about territory sharing, Lorenzo brought Emma. The Russo's underboss, a man named Sal who'd been in the game for 30 years, sized her up dismissively. "You brought your kid to a business meeting?" "I brought my advisor," Lorenzo said calmly. Sal laughed. "No offense, honey, but your offer is structured to look like a 60-40 split," Emma interrupted, "but the territory you're ceding has 22% lower commercial value than the territory you're asking for. Factor in development potential and foot traffic patterns. It's actually 70-30 in your favor. Try again." Sal's smile vanished. "I don't think you understand how this works." "I understand perfectly. You're betting we won't check the math." Emma pulled up demographic data on her tablet. "But I did. Your territory has 3 businesses with EPA violations, 2 properties with tax liens, and 1 building scheduled for demolition. You're dumping liabilities and calling it a deal." She pushed the tablet across the table. "Here's a real 60-40 split. Take it or we walk." Sal looked at Lorenzo, who merely sipped his coffee. "She speaks for me, Sal." They took the deal. Word spread fast in Chicago's underworld. Lorenzo Vitale's daughter was not to be underestimated. By age 17, Emma had restructured Lorenzo's entire financial operation. She'd created predictive models for law enforcement movements. She designed communication protocols that were mathematically unbreakable. She'd even identified and removed 2 more internal threats before they could act. She became known, in whispered circles, as the calculator, the girl who saw angles no one else could find. But it was the quiet moments that defined their relationship now. Late nights in the office, working side by side. Lorenzo reviewing contracts while Emma built new encryption layers. Sometimes they didn't speak for hours, just existed in comfortable silence. "Do you ever regret it?" Emma asked one evening. "Taking me in? All the complications I brought." Lorenzo looked up from his papers. "Every day." Emma's face fell. "I regret that we didn't have more time," he continued softly. "I regret that you had to die at 10 years old. I regret that you can't have a normal life." He set down his pen. "But taking you in, calling you my daughter, that's the one thing I'll never regret." Emma smiled, that genuine smile she reserved only for him. "Good. Because you're stuck with me now. I'm counting on it." Outside the windows, Chicago glittered like a circuit board Emma had long since decoded. The city that had almost killed her now bent to her analysis. And beside her father, she was finally completely home. The estate's terrace had become Emma's favorite place to think. It was late August, 3 months after her 17th birthday. The sun hung low over the distant Chicago skyline, painting everything gold and amber. From here, 40 miles out, the city looked like a miniature model. Beautiful, manageable, understandable. Emma leaned against the stone railing, a tablet in her hands showing financial projections she'd been perfecting all afternoon. Behind her, the estate sprawled quiet and peaceful. The home she'd been brought to as a frightened 10-year-old now felt as natural as breathing. "Still working?" She turned to find Lorenzo walking out onto the terrace, 2 glasses of iced tea in his hands. He'd loosened his tie, the only concession he ever made to relaxation. "Just finishing the quarterly analysis," Emma said, accepting the glass. "We're up 14% from last year. The new laundering protocols are working exactly as predicted." "Of course they are. You designed them." They stood side by side at the railing, watching the sunset. This had become their ritual. End of the week, end of the day, just the 2 of them watching Chicago from a distance. "I got the college acceptance letter today," Emma said quietly. Lorenzo stiffened slightly.
"MIT?"
"Full scholarship. Computer science and applied mathematics." She paused. "I could start in January if I wanted. Do you want to?" Emma was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know. Part of me wants to learn more, push myself. But another part," she looked at him. "I'd have to leave. Again." Different this time, but still leaving. Education is important, Emma. So is family. Lorenzo set down his glass and turned to face her fully. When I was your age, I thought power was everything. Building the empire, consolidating control, being untouchable. That's what mattered. And now I know I was wrong, he gestured at the distant city. All of that, the money, the territory, the respect, it's empty if there's no one who matters. My sister taught me that, even though I didn't understand it until after she was gone. And then you. He trailed off, but Emma understood. She always understood. You know what's funny? Emma said. 7 years ago, I was starving on a Chicago street, thinking I'd probably die in some alley. I pickpocketed the wrong person and thought my life was over. Best mistake you ever made. Best mistake we both made. You could have turned me over to police. Could have just given me money and sent me away. But you didn't. You solved a $50 billion puzzle in 5 seconds. I wasn't going to just let you walk away. Emma laughed, a real, genuine sound that she'd learned in this house. Is that what you tell yourself? That it was just business? Lorenzo's expression softened. Maybe at first. For about 5 minutes. Then you corrected my accountant and ate crackers on my couch, and I realized you were something extraordinary. He put his hand on her shoulder. You became family, Emma. Not because you were useful. Because you were you. The sunset deepened, shadows lengthening across the terrace. In the distance, Chicago's lights began to flicker on one by one. 5 seconds changed everything, Lorenzo said quietly, staring at the city. 5 seconds to solve a puzzle, and my entire world shifted. Emma looked at him, this man who'd been cold, calculating, untouchable when she'd met him. Who'd slowly, impossibly, become her father in every way that mattered. Who'd risked everything to keep her safe. She smirked, that clever expression she'd perfected over the years.
No.
You changed everything. Lorenzo turned to her, surprised. 5 seconds unlocked money, Emma continued. But you gave me a life. A home. A name that means something. You could have used me like everyone else wanted to. Instead, you protected me.
Taught me.
Made me your daughter for real. Her voice softened. You changed everything, Dad. Not me. For a moment, Lorenzo Vitali, feared Mafia boss, strategic genius, man who'd built an empire on calculation and cold logic, looked almost vulnerable. Then he pulled Emma into a tight hug. We changed everything together, he said finally. They stood there as the sun disappeared completely, Chicago transforming into a constellation of lights below. Emma thought about the journey, from hungry orphan to protected heir. From Mina Collins to Emma Vitali. From solving puzzles for survival to reshaping an empire with the person who'd given her everything. I think I'll defer MIT, Emma said quietly. Maybe go in a year or two. Right now, she looked up at him. Right now, I'm exactly where I need to be. Lorenzo nodded, understanding completely. The Empire can use your brilliance a bit longer. The Empire? Emma pulled back with a raised eyebrow. Dad, in case you haven't noticed, I basically run half of it already. He laughed, a sound as rare as it was genuine.
Yes.
Yes, you do. As night fell completely, they walked back inside together. Father and daughter. Boss and strategist. Two people who'd found each other in the chaos and built something unbreakable. Behind them, Chicago glittered in the darkness, a city that had witnessed a cold man learn to love and a brilliant girl become a force of nature. 5 seconds had started it all. But 7 years had made it family.